Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. I appreciate you guys joining me here today. If you've never seen or heard this show, thank you for checking it out. If improving education is a topic you're interested in, I hope you will consider subscribing to be notified when I make more content in the future. I'm going to be making some changes to this channel in the near future, last week of June to be exact. I'm very, very excited about it. I'm really excited. Actually, I'm going to be having a big guest coming in that week to help me launch the new look and feel of the channel and the new format. It's not going to be like drastically different, except, I think the look and feel is going to be more appropriate for what we're doing here. And I also think that the way I'm going to be presenting content and the kinds of people and topics we're going to be discussing are going to be more on point for being part of the solution. Let's put it that way. All right. I know you're going to want to be part of that and in the loop. So please do consider subscribing. At the moment, I would ask you to please like and share this broadcast so as many people as are interested can be involved in this conversation. Helps me get the word out, and you can link it to your social media accounts, send it to people you know who are at minimum homeschool curious. I think we're going to cover a lot of ground today. They will want to be here and be in the chat. Remember, homeschooling is not a solo pursuit for any of us. So I think this show should be no different. Let's learn about it together. All right, getting to the topic at hand, the Homeschool Awakening movie. This is Kirk Cameron's limited engagement Fathom event. It was in the theater for just 2 days. There was a decent amount of hype around it within the homeschool community, but that's about it. I didn't see it advertised too much out in the mainstream, but because I'm paying attention to the stuff, I saw it. And I guess a lot of people who are at least homeschool curious saw it too, saw the advertisements, the marketing campaign. So it was out for just 2 days, Monday and Tuesday of this week. And I did see it. Maybe some of you did. Maybe some of you didn't. David, I see that you didn't get to see it, but that's okay, because I think you can still contribute to this conversation a lot because you've been homeschooling or you have homeschooled. So that's important here too, because you who have even not seen it but are homeschooling or have homeschooled are going to help me either by bouncing off ideas from what I say about the movie and what I say about homeschooling, or contributing to the audience who are just here trying to get more information. You're going to help all of us out. So if you didn't see it, don't worry about it. I think this show is going to help you decide if you want to find a way to see it, or if it was okay that you missed it, or whatever. If you didn't see it, you can also always go visit their website. I'm going to show you that right now. They have, well, I thought I was going to, but apparently I'm not going to be able to share a screen. Okay. Well, they have a homeschooling, the homeschooolawakening.com website. They show the trailer there, but you don't get to see the movie. Maybe they're going to put it on YouTube. Maybe they're not. I'm not really sure. But regardless, here's the way I'm going to approach this today. I'm going to start with what I liked about the film. I'm going to front load it with the positive stuff. Okay. Then I'm going to tell you what I didn't particularly care for and why, what I thought were missed opportunities or I just plain didn't like, and what I wish they'd done differently, etc. And you're free to chat and comment and say things in the chat while I'm doing that. By all means, if you saw it and you agree with me, disagree with me, go ahead and throw it in there for others to see. This is a group effort. But after I get done with that, I'm guessing around 30 minutes or so, then I want to do a Q&A. So if you have questions of me about homeschooling, if you have something you want to say that you would like me to address, drop it in the chat, and I'm going to try to get to as many of those as possible. If you'd like to join me right up here on the screen, actually be over here, like in this space, at least with your voice. You don't have to show your face. It's okay. But when we do Q&A, if you want to do that, I'm going to open it up to super chats. Super chat kind of helps me, so it's not like like a lot of people, but also I do appreciate your support. It helps keep me doing this work. And it helps me see the name of like, who am I bringing onto the channel? Because you would click that in your browser and I would see people popping up in front of me and I would need to know who am I bringing in, right? So that will help me then. That's how this show is going to go. That's the structure of it if you're trying to plan your afternoon. Okay, so let's get started. What I liked about the movie. All right. Well, for starters, I like that they got all the facts right. I mean, I'm not really surprised they got the facts right. What do I mean by the facts? They got it right that anyone can homeschool. They got it right that there are really no two homeschools that are exactly the same because there are no two families that are exactly the same. They got a lot of this, the finer points of, the soft side of homeschooling right, about how each family has a personality, how homeschooling is an adventure, how you're not really supposed to necessarily know exactly what you're doing day one, and you can change on the fly. You can make changes. They captured that, I thought, very well. I thought the visuals were nice. I thought the spirit of adventure was conveyed very nicely. And it was, Melissa's saying it was very encouraging as a homeschool parent. I agree. I think for those people who are doing it and feeling like, oh God, it helps reinforce the wonderful gift that you're giving your children, the gift you're giving yourself as a parent. I thought it did that beautifully. I thought it got all those points absolutely spot on. I also like the way it talked about the different kinds of learners. Now, I've said on this channel, and I'll say it again, I don't go in for the notion of learning styles as a scientific thing, because it isn't. It's not. There's no such thing as a, auditory learner or this kind of learner. They've done tests on it. That is not true. What we have, and what you may have heard in the movie with, I think her name is Elizabeth Cook. Is that her name, or Kathy? No, Kathy Cook. Anyway, she said that she wrote a book called The 8 Kinds of Smarts. And I don't love the title because the smart conjures up all kinds of things, but there are different, let's call them talents. Remember we used to use the word talent? Remember that? It was like an okay word to use, and we all were talented at something. I mean, there was always something. Well, that's kind of what I would prefer, because what we have our sort of innate or inborn talents or inclinations, proclivities that we don't necessarily think about. They just kind of come to us naturally. And that might be, how you go, brain? That might be something, that's why you see musicians that run in a family, or artists that run in a family, or, engineers run in a family, because we do have, nurture does count. And we do have certain kinds of talents that seem to pass genetically, okay, or at least in the environment of the home and what people are talking about, because you're growing up with people like that. So those do exist, and they're probably inborn. That said, we all learn in all the ways. So in other words, we all are word learners. We're all, that. So I liked that they called them out: word and logic learners, the picture learners, and body learner, physical learners. But I'm going to get to what I don't like later. So what I do like is that they called out that there are different talents that kids have, and it's important for parents to create opportunities for the kids to capitalize on those talents, leverage those talents to do other learning. So to learn right there in that area, go ahead and learn some more art, learn some more sports, but also to use those things and those inclinations to learn the academic subjects. Okay, run through your multiplication tables while you're playing hoops. Absolutely fantastic ideas. So I really liked the amount of creativity that it showed in terms of how different families approach their homeschooling experience. I liked that it showed some working parents. I liked that they, like I said, that they showed that you could travel, that you have so much freedom. They covered all of that. They also covered accurately, I believe, the order in which you would go about thinking about and planning to homeschool. That being, first, identify your family's needs. No, you don't first identify curriculum. So many people come to me, what should I use? What curriculum? I'm like, stop. No. First, you have to identify your family's needs. And I have a video in my Let's Talk About Homeschooling playlist right here on this channel called, I think, what did I call it? A typical homeschool day, questions to create your own. The questions you ask yourself, because there's no such thing as a typical day. It was kind of a trick, but you first identify your family's needs. That's job one. The second thing you do is identify your child's needs, your child's strengths and weaknesses and areas of what we just talked about, their talents, their particular kind of smart, if you want to go with that. And then you would identify, and a lot of people go, and then curriculum, right? Right. And then they're like all eager, like, and then you tell me what box to buy, right? No. And then you build your community. And this can all be going on, by the way, if you're in the school year while you're deschooling. This can actually be part of your deschooling process, or you can do it in the summertime or whatever. But no, then you identify your community. And what that means is you start figuring out, do I have people, family members, neighbors, work colleagues, people we know from school who are also leaving, etc., or do I need to now set an example? And I love that they mentioned this. It was probably one of my favorite parts of the whole movie, is they mentioned the role model that you are going to be when you demonstrate for your children how to build community, how to go out and go towards friendships and build friendships where you currently maybe don't have one, rather than just leaning on people you already know or being very passive about it or saying, I can't because I don't already have it. Your kids are paying attention. And our kids right now are at a time period in history where they're not particularly wonderful at taking risks, interpersonal risks, and going towards friendship and making new friends and cultivating friendships, real life in-person friendships. So being the adult and wanting to set a good example and also learn alongside your child, this is your golden opportunity. And I absolutely love that they brought this up in the movie, that this is your chance. So it might mean, in one case, they mentioned one of the girls who was one of the daughters said, let's host a bake sale in the neighborhood. She liked to bake. She was baking. She hosted a bake sale. It got people around, and they were able to make friends in the neighborhood. Even if they weren't all homeschooling, they made friends in the neighborhood where they previously didn't have friends. She also got some customers, by the way, for her baking, which was another thing that I loved about the movie. They showed how the older kids, middle school and above, could have internships, jobs, and or pursue passions like working on a farm or baking or making jewelry or things like that, where they could even investigate selling them in some kind of way. Honing a skill and developing a craft that, oh, look at that, might help me decide what I want to be when I grow up. So I loved that. I love that they showed people actually doing it, because you don't often get to see teenagers, younger children doing things that adults typically do, like becoming a pastry chef or a jewelry designer or a chiropractor's assistant. These are all things that are in the movie. You don't think about that. You think of the kid working at Chick-fil-A and, fries with that, whatever. That's what you think of. And while that is a wonderful thing to do, to go work for a living, my own daughter is working fast food and coffee barista, so I don't want to cast aspersions. It's a far cry from doing nothing, but homeschool gives you the opportunity or your child the opportunity to take that even to the next level, where they're gaining valuable skills they can use and to figure out what they want to do next, or to actually build skills in that area. Another thing I loved about the movie was the different showing, although I'll mention this later, I did it a little too briefly, in my opinion. They showed how the college-bound kids figured out college, how they figured out that, how they maybe took college classes before they even went to a college at all, online for practically free, how they were able to get scholarships, how there are homeschool students are desirable at colleges, and so on. So I think they did a good job of showing it doesn't have to be the same straight path that everybody else takes, and or you don't have to go to college at all. You could, go towards the career path you want earlier, because you can. No one's in your way. And I liked that a lot. I liked the fact that they showed that life has its ups and downs homeschooling, and it's not always perfect. And sometimes you have to reassess and change your schedule or change what you're doing because somebody got a new job or somebody's job changed or a relative got sick and you had to travel, or you just, oopsie, we're pregnant, we're having another baby and we're in the middle of a cross country trip. It's like all kinds of little things that can come up. And it showed how when you're homeschooling, it's actually easier to adapt to these vicissitudes of life that just come up because you're already flexible. It's already your life. It's not school at home on some kind of schedule. You're on your schedule, and that changes often. It changes as often as you need it to change. And Melissa says, I love the way that the baker's mom explained how she put academics after experience. Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that they emphasized that the priorities could be your child's priorities, the student's priorities, family priorities, and child's priorities, and didn't necessarily have to be somebody else, the state, or some arbitrary list of academic subjects. You know, you have to teach this, 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 and this. And I thought they did an excellent job of that. Other things that I liked about it was I liked that there was a mix of boys and girls. Very often we'll see, you know, too much on one side or the other. This was a good balance in terms of like the gender mix. It was a pretty good balance on the age mix. I would like to have seen, because we're seeing more and more people come out older, a little more than that, but I thought it was a pretty good balance overall. And I thought the I thought the emphasis on family was crucial. I think, like I said, you know, aside from the role modeling that you can do as a parent in the day-to-day life and showing how much time they were able to spend with each other, and the emotional bonds that can be created with the family, how central the family is in the homeschooling world and life. I thought that was great, but I also thought just even the way that the siblings were closer because they were together all the time, and the friendships they made were closer because they were face to face more often. There might have been fewer people, but they're face to face and they're having experiences together. They are growing up together of different ages too. Love that they showed kids as young as 2 and as old as 12 going out and hiking in the woods together and doing activities together and socializing with each other, which is more real world than you're ever going to see in a school. So I absolutely loved that. They just did overall a fantastic job showing all the softer side wonderfulness of homeschooling. So I, you know, props to them for that. I thought they definitely made it aspirational in an emotional way, which I think is important. I think people need to dial into, this is a life. It's a lifestyle and a life and a childhood that you are giving not only your children, but yourself. At one point, one of the fathers said that he did the math and he'd reclaimed 16,000 hours of his children's childhood to spend with them. And it's like when you sit with that and you listen to that number, you're like, wow, 16,000 hours I otherwise would not have spent with my child. Who's spending the 16,000 hours with them? What are they telling them during that 16,000 hours? What are they learning? What are they not learning? What are they not going to know about me, mom or dad, you know, like you? What are they not going to remember? What are they not going to have any awareness of? Okay, what are they not going to respect? What are they not going to appreciate? What are they going to appreciate that maybe you wish they didn't, et cetera, and so forth. So I thought they did a great job of just showing the amount of time you get back, the amount of closeness you get back, and the things that you don't have to give up, that it's not a sacrifice, it's a gift. It's a gift for you, the parent, and it's a gift that you're giving your child. And one of my favorite parts of it was when one of the moms said, my children are going to know they were worth it. They were worth me not getting that new car. They were worth me not going on that vacation. They were worth, you know, all of that. They're just going to know it inside. And you know, if there's one privilege that some people have, it's, you know, nuclear family privilege, even if it's a single mom, because they did have a single mom in this movie, and they had a single mom who made it abundantly clear that she had put her daughter first and had figured out a life for her daughter. And now her daughter is going to end up being one of the youngest NASA engineers that ever lived. So yeah, single mom. So that's pretty intense, pretty amazing. Let's see, we've got here, I hope the homeschool judgment is over. It was tough to deal with within my own family. My parents thought I was destroying my kids. No support can lead to self-doubt. We're going to talk about that. American 007. Is it 007? Yeah, you're like a James Bond, Jane Bond. I don't know if male or female, but yeah, that is very common, the judgment. And this is, according to Gatto, it takes 100 hours to teach it 3 hours as long as someone shows interest first. Absolutely. That's another thing they did well in the movie. They showed how little time you need to spend doing academic stuff for these kids. The kids that were in this movie, and it was, like I said, it was a diverse age range, and boys, girls, whatever. There was even a girl with Down syndrome. it was so inspiring because you're listening to these kids talk. You know what I didn't hear? Like, third grade vocabulary from a 15-year-old, things like that. No, I didn't hear that. I heard polite, well-adjusted, articulate, centered, like kids who were speaking in ways that were, age appropriate and we would have absolutely expected just 25 years ago. Not even that, maybe even 15 years ago. And now it's like, yeah, what, meh, bruh. I'm sorry, what, can I get a complete sentence? How about some eye contact? All right. So these kids demonstrated, and you can say, well, they were scripted. No, it looked like they were speaking pretty much off the cuff. They were asked questions. They were just sitting there speaking. Now, obviously, they clipped out the best pieces and the things that the kids said that were intelligent. So, all right, fine. There might have been some editing, but it seemed really genuine. And then when they put the camera on the kids in the basement doing their civics lesson, I was just like, this is awesome. This is why you homeschool. A bunch of kids, different ages, are getting a lesson on Lexington and Concord from one of the moms, and there's other moms there, and they're just all joining in this together to learn about geography, to learn about civics, to learn about history. And I thought, how great. While at the same time, they did an excellent job of showing that there are some kids who just want to go in the corner and read a book and let them go. You can do that. No one's going to make them cry. No one's going to say, well, so-and-so doesn't play nice with others and didn't join in our group activity today. Minus SEL points. Like, that's not going to happen. Okay. So it showed that you could be that like group. Let's do it together and go out on a hike and do whatever. But if your kid is a solo, preneur when it comes to learning, or a particular subject occupies their mind and they want to go tinker, and they want to deal with it, and they're like, leave me alone. I need to focus. There's not going to be 30 other kids or a teacher saying you can't do that. And I think that was a wonderful, wonderful lesson. Let's see. David saying, please talk about how much better the kids are socialized with homeschooling. I can never express it clearly enough to my friends at work. We are going to get to that. That's kind of what I'm talking about now. When I say they were working well and hiking and with other age group people, this was coming naturally to them. And I'll go back to what I said about the parents. You got to model this, guys. I can't tell you how many parents I've seen who say, well, what about socialization? I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You think that's all going to get done at being in a place with a lot of people is not socialization. I mean, it's a kind of socialization. It's probably not the one you want. Doesn't mean you're friends, because as they pointed out in the movie so beautifully, now your child is in a place where they're sort of looking at their peers and comparing themselves academically, socially, in terms of their dress, in terms of what, how much money they might have and things like that, arbitrarily. It's not by their choice, and it's not by your choice. It's by the government's choice, or it's by the school's choice, or whatever it is. So that can create a lot of drama, as we know, bullying and all kinds of things. When you're homeschooling, those social connections, that community, you build it, you cultivate it. Your child can opt in, opt out as they're ready, as is appropriate. And you can role model how to discern who are good people to hang out with, who are not so good people to hang out with, by virtue of who you hang out with. They're seeing the best example possible of socialization from you. What do you do? How do you make friends? How do you interact with people at the grocery store, at the DMV, in traffic? What are you doing? You're socializing them. That's what they're learning. So if you trust yourself to do it better than a bunch of randos in a building that you don't know, then you're already miles ahead of things, whether they have a co-op to go to or a bunch of homeschool friends or not. You're going to go out in the world. They did a great job of showing, they're like, we don't lock our children in the house. They showed them going to the Walmart, going to the grocery store, all the things I talk about and other homeschoolers talk about. And people who don't homeschool are like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They don't believe us. Or as they pointed out in the movie, they'll say, isn't it harder to go to the grocery store with all 5 of your children, or all 3 of your children, or 2 of your children, or whatever? And I'm like, no, it's not harder. It's actually easier, because it's part of learning. I'm turning it. It makes my homeschooling easier For sure, because there's a lesson I didn't have to, figure out. There it is. We're in public. We're in the store. How do you behave? Make a list. Each of you get a cart. You get the produce. You get the this. You get that. Okay, total it up. I used to do that with my kids, even when they were very young. I would say, I want you to estimate, just round up the dollar amounts because they were little. We're talking elementary school. Round it up to the whole and add it in your head and give me an idea of where we are, when we get to the checkout. And that was their math problem for the two older ones. They would do that. They said, with the younger one, I'd let her have a little piece of paper. She could do it. But the older one, it was like, 8 years old. I'm like, you can do this in your head. So, and some people were going, 8, they could do it in their head. Yeah. Cause when you're learning at home by 8, your addition facts, because there's nobody holding you back and waiting for the kid who doesn't even know their numbers yet to catch up before you can do the addition. So when you're working as a team, as Shannon is pointing out, work as a team. When you're working as a team in homeschool, it's not this arbitrary, okay, you 10 people go do an assignment as a group. It's something that makes sense to do as a team. Shopping as a team makes sense. It makes sense. Divide and conquer. Okay. You get out of there quicker. Leverage your children in a good way, in a healthy way. So they showed all of that absolutely beautifully. And as Wiki says, when you, in real life, you're surrounded by people of all ages, not just your age group, when you have opportunities galore. That is another thing they did a great job of. They talked about the places you can go and the things you can do when everybody else is at school that are empty parks, empty gyms, empty, venues. There are places like gymnastic studios and horseback riding lessons. I've talked about this on the channel where, they have to wait for the kids to get out of school. So they have all day, they still have bills to pay. So you figure it out and come up with a group of, 10 people. You don't have to know each other. But if you can find, recruit 10 people who want to do gymnastics or want to do something there and say, can we do a homeschool lesson of blah, blah, blah during these hours for a reduced rate? They're happy to get anybody in there. 10 people at $10 for a gymnastics class. We'll do it. That's what we had for homeschool riding. We didn't know each other. We didn't know each other at all. They just had a program where you could come and ride for $10. We have homeschool riding in the middle of the day. Nobody else is there. They have to wait for the school kids to get out of school. So, yes, this, and I'm going to talk about this in the things I didn't love, the 8 smarts, 7 intelligences. Yeah, we're totally going to talk about that. So that's the list of things I really liked, and I thought they did a great job of. All right. I might come up with some others that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but those are the ones that really stood out, inspirational, that. At the same time, and now I'm segueing into the stuff that I was less than thrilled with. Overall, while they hit the high points and all the things that I thought were correct, and they got all their facts straight, optically and emotionally, they missed a lot of opportunities. First one is, and I'm going to get some pushback, but I'm supposed to say it was too Christian. It was just too Christian. If you're going to make a Homeschooling Awakening movie and you're going to bill it as it's about homeschooling, make it about homeschooling. If you want to make a movie about Christian homeschooling, then call it Christian Homeschooling Awakening or something. Make it abundantly clear that you are witnessing, that you are proselytizing, that you are out there talking to Christians and or people you wish were Christian. Because the message I got as a non-Christian sitting there was homeschool is Christian homeschool. And that is a myth that I, as a homeschooling advocate, have been desperately trying to crush because it's a myth. It's not true. And I'm super frustrated about this because there were so many good things about the movie, but I can't blanket recommend it because it will, not it might, it will turn off people who are not going to do morning devotional. It's not even remotely of interest to them. They are not homeschooling for the Lord. And I'm not trying to make fun of anybody. If you guys, hey, this is your deal, do it. Love it. Embrace it. I'm happy for you. That's fan-flipping-tastic. And I agree that you cannot effectively raise children. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, way out on a limb. I don't think you can effectively raise children without philosophy. I don't think you raise your kids in a vacuum. If there's one set of questions that will come up in your life when you are raising your kids and you don't want them answered at school, that's for sure, is why is this all here? Why are we here? What's the point of all of this? What matters? Why does it matter? All those questions are going to get asked. Most notably, how did this all get here? Who made the world? Who made me? That will happen. That's going to happen probably quicker than can a man have a baby and like all this other stuff that they're talking about, and can a man be a woman? That's probably not going to come up in just general conversation with your 5-year-old or a 3-year-old. But, who made the world and why is the sky blue, stuff like that. Now, for those of you who say, because God, fantastic. That's your philosophy. That's your set of answers. You've got that figured out, how you're going to answer the big whys for your kids. The implication that those of us who don't refer to the Bible don't have those answers, aren't going to give those answers, don't want to give those answers, and have no philosophy, or just like aimless, whatever. This implication that you are either Christian or you're lost. You're either Christian or you're woke. And I'm seeing it everywhere. I see it on Twitter. I see it everywhere, that that so many people walking around saying, well, I would homeschool, but I'm not Christian. That is literally something I've heard. That exact sentence. Well, I can't homeschool. I'm not Christian. I'm sorry, what? Only homeschoolers, or, only Christian people homeschool. It's all Bible this, but I won't be able to find science. People believe this stuff because they believe that myth. So when you make a movie and it's like the Lord and God and this, and you're quoting the Bible and everything is the Lord, and you're brought to tears about, my children are going to know I love the Lord. And I mean, that's great. But it was every single solitary family pretty much was saying that. It wasn't a family or 2 families or half the families. It was all the families. Even the college-bound kid was going to Christian private college. I mean, understand something. I wasn't offended. I don't offend. They're not there to please me. This isn't about my feelings. This is about a missed opportunity. I am trying to persuade people that you don't have to be Christian, that you can make friends in the homeschooling community, and people aren't going to judge you if you aren't Christian. They're going to be able to build a co-op or find a co-op somewhere, or micro school. You're not going to be a fish out of water or on the fringe or not welcome at the table. And watching this movie, I felt like a liar. And I know I'm not. I know it's true. But this movie contradicts me. It's in a not so subtle way. And that's what bothered me. That's what bothered me. I felt like that was my biggest, like, please stop. I kept cringing because of how much it was validating that myth. If somebody went to that movie, a secular person, and again, I'm not a woke person who's progressive and all down with the public schools and SEL and gender this and that and whatever queer theory, wasn't going to that movie in the first place. Everybody knows Kirk Cameron is Christian. We know that. But I was still hoping, against hope, that he would show it as a homeschool awakening, not a Christian enlightenment plus homeschool. And I just felt it was a missed opportunity. Because I have more work to do, obviously, to, put a call out to those people who are secular and anti-woke, unwoke, philosophical, but not, Marxist, Kant, Rousseau, Marcuse, Freire, and all this other garbage. Okay. People are more like John Locke, Francis Bacon, right? Those people that I read. Okay. When I talk to my people, like, well, Deb, how do you explain morality to your children without the Bible? And I'm sorry to take on the nasty voice, but I've literally had that asked to me in the past week. In the past week alone. You can't possibly educate your children in a moral and righteous life and with character unless you use the Bible. Bummer. So you're basically saying that my children are going to grow up to be terrible people because I'm not using the Bible specifically to teach them their morality. I might use the Bible in other ways, history, humanities, art history, so many things, but I'm not teaching morality that way. I'm not teaching character that way. And that's not to say the Bible isn't rich with lots of wonderful character lessons. It is. And I might teach them that. I might even pull them out and teach them that way. But that's a very different thing than doing devotionals. And people who are of faith, I think, like I said, this is nothing against the faithful. Please do you. But please remember that not everybody is you. And there's also different kinds of Christians. This movie didn't speak to Catholics. If you're Catholic and you do things differently, or you go to mass, or you don't read the Bible quite the same way, it didn't really speak to you. If you're Jewish, didn't speak to you. If you're Muslim, didn't really speak to you. They were very, very specifically talking about Christianity, and a very specific kind of Christianity. That's the feeling I got out of it. Yeah, we need a secular homeschool something. It's just, it was heavy with that. And then the next thing, because I don't know if it was because of that or if this was just an offshoot of that, was demographically, in addition to being pretty much all Christian, it did not show enough, and I can't believe I'm going to say this. It didn't show enough diversity, and I'm not talking about color diversity. I'm talking about income and class diversity. It didn't show enough variety of homeschoolers across socioeconomic status. It didn't give you any indication that you can do this and be a working parent outside the home. It made it look like you need to be in the, gig world, working from home on your computer, or have a part-time job. Either or both parents. And that's just because those are the people they profiled for the most part, or they didn't tell us, or they just didn't tell us what dad did, or they didn't explain how the parents sat down and worked out their budget. I would like to have seen more of we sat down and we decided that my husband makes a better income than I do, and so he's going to continue to go to work outside the home. I'm going to stay home. We're going to economize. Here's how we're economizing. These are the things that we cut. These are the things that we're doing without. This is why we think it's important, but we are making cuts. And then, of course, a lot of the people lived in really nice homes in really nice areas. So that would have been a tough sell anyway. They even had one that they had a couple. They looked like Instagrammers. I felt like I was watching HGTV. And they said, so we've had our friend who's an interior designer come over and design our garage nook. And I'm thinking, the average person doesn't have a friend who's an interior designer who's going to come over and design their garage homeschool nook. Not to mention, they probably could have figured that one out for themselves just looking on Pinterest, but whatever. That maybe they agreed to give the designer some exposure as part of the payment. I don't know. But the bottom line was there were parts of it that were just a little too bougie for me to be credible. And it's just, sue me. That's my take. I felt like it was cute. What they did was super cute, but they were just so perfect. Like the little blonde children, and I mean, that's a real family. They're real people and they're doing homeschooling. And I think it's great, but people filling the theater and paying $15 a ticket to sit and watch people do something that they may not be able to do. Like I kept wanting them to go back to the family. No, it wasn't more. Oh, I don't know. I thought you were talking to me, but Mormon. No, I don't think so. There was a family that where the mom had pulled the son from school because he was diagnosed with ADHD and he was having trouble. And so the mom was doing her level best to homeschool him. And the dad had to get kind of pulled in to help one day because they had a illness in the family, and they kind of showed their lifestyle. And I felt like I wanted to see more of them. I was kind of like, can we go back to that? Because their life is a little bit more like people I know. It's like most people. So most people are like, well, we're going to have to make some cuts, and, one of us is going to go to work and one of us is going to stay home most of the time, or have to do work part-time from home, and, so forth. So that was, I felt, a missed opportunity. Not just that it wasn't secular enough, but it wasn't diverse enough in terms of the type of socioeconomic levels that the parents have who want to homeschool. We need to show people this is, this is accessible. And they did like offhanded remarks, like you don't need, you could spend thousands of dollars, or you could get a library card and, and something free, whatever. Yes, you can, but it's a little more credible to show an urban family when you do that, where the library is right there and they can walk to it, right? Or take a bus or something. It's a little more credible when you show the family in a 3-bedroom apartment or something. Now, they did have one of the families was in an apartment, They did show that. And again, I got the impression that they were on a more limited budget, but they still should have talked about it. They should have hit it head on. How did we make it work financially? What did we give up? Who decided not to go back to work in an office? A lot of families are dual income. Or conversely, how did we keep both our jobs, shift things around to where there was one couple where like when he goes to work, I'm doing, the childcare and the homeschooling. And then he comes home from his shift and I do this, but he works in a gym. He's a coach and he works in a gym. And I mean, not that that's so far afield, but let's see some people who do shift work, like they're nurses, they're doctors, they're firemen, they're police officers. They are, they work in retail. They work in restaurants. They do other things like that. They're a receptionist. Like, let's talk about the kinds of things that a lot of people do where they feel like both of us have to work full time, 8 hours a day. Let's show some other situations that people have, that how they can do it and how they can make adjustments. And then the other thing was, it was a very female dominated setup. There was, Homefront Girl. I thought I was watching Chip and Joanna, right? I did too. I was like, oh, please. No. They're not literally going to do a time-lapse photography on painting the pegboard. They did. Yeah, they did. They went there. Anyway, yeah, it is a pet peeve to make it overly religious, David. It was too much. Like a little, yes. But I kept waiting for them to pull it back and do a mix, show how it works across religions, even across religions. Can we have some other religion? Like just to mix it up, reach a broader audience. The other thing was, it was so female. It really was. And here we are in a time period where one of the complaints that a lot of people have about public school in particular, but also schooling in general, education in general, it's been feminized to the point of ridiculousness, where there are very few male teachers at the elementary and middle school level. Those that are, still championing the feminine virtues, if you will. So things like, feelings and emotion and compassion and empathy, they're talking that up a bit. There's really not a safe place for a traditional male in education right now, in a good way. Okay. Rough and tumble athletic, or a man who's very straightforward and very matter of fact, very scientific thinker, a logical thinker. So that just there's not room for that. So, a lot of people are pulling their sons out of school. I'm seeing more boys come out than girls. Both are coming out, but I'm seeing parents of like middle school boys say like, I had to get him out. I thought like very bad things were going to happen. Okay. So they, we need to address that. Now, one of the families showed that. It said the one mom said, I was afraid my older son was going to cease to be himself if he stayed in school any longer. And she pulled him out, and then they homeschooled the rest of the kids. And it did kind of save him. But it's like this movie had a habit of taking something really, like it was absolutely important. And instead of lingering on it and saying, let's develop this a little more, they went, bye. It was like, really, really important point. We're leaving it. So they left a lot of material on the table, in my personal opinion. So they showed mostly the moms doing the care, the moms doing the education, the moms doing the planning, the moms, they would say, well, then he comes in and does this. And then when I'm not, then he does this. I just kept feeling like dad was on the side. And it was at the very end of the movie that said, and dads, you need to get in and did it. And I'm like, considering one of the dads is a homeschool entrepreneur who is like, really big behind it. He talked his wife into it. I was like, can we have more from him? It's like they should have balanced it out. We should have had much more from him, at least to balance out from the female entrepreneurs. Lots of female entrepreneurs. One guy, they let him talk for probably a grand total of 5 minutes in the whole film. And yet I was like, I want more of this dude. This is important. There are fathers. We need fathers. It's not just mama bear time. It's father bear time. It is fathers stand up and protect your children time. It's be the sheepdog and get them away from the predators. Quite literally, your daughters as well as your sons. The daughters need their dad. And even if you're the one who you decide your income is higher, because typically it is, although it won't always be. So Moms, dads, if the mom makes more money than dad, have a talk. Have a talk. Maybe dad should be the one doing the homeschool, but they didn't show like that was even possible. They made it seem like it has to be nurturing mom, has to be the mommy. No, it doesn't. It just has to be the family. It could be an older sibling, could be a kid who's, upper high school, could be doing a lot while both, by both parents go off to work and that child helps with the younger child. There are many ways to do this. So this was a little too, even when Kirk Cameron at the end goes to the statue in Plymouth, Massachusetts, dedicated to the founding fathers and mothers, he talks about how it's dedicated to the founding fathers, then proceeds to spend all this time showing the woman that it's represented by a woman and she's educating her child. And then the child grows up and it's a wise man. And I'm like, do you not just see that? What just happened there? No, he didn't. You completely missed it. I was like, the woman educates the wise man. So the child grows up and it's a wise man, but okay. I mean, it really came across. The subtle messaging is this is a mommy job. And no, it's not. No, it's not. I'm glad it was for me because I would have been jealous if it had been my husband home with the kids doing it when I was doing it, or my ex-husband rather. Sorry. But if the wife doesn't want to do it, but the husband does want to do it, to let him do it. It shouldn't be like, honey, we should really, really homeschool. And the wife is like, I've got a career. I've spent, 20 years building and I make more money than you. And, why should it be me? And the film made it seem like it should be her. That's what it seemed like to me. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it just seemed like it was the woman's job. And so I think, even Kirk's wife was in charge of now, granted, he's an actor, he's traveling and so forth. You can work that out, but they just made it seem so female dominated. And, all the co-ops featured all mommies and you know what, that may end up being the case. I don't dispute it. That may end up being reality, that 90% of the people are going to be moms. But guys, if we do not get dads involved, and if we do not make this accessible for two-income families where dad could be the stay-at-home parent more of the time, then I think, we're going to miss a lot of kids. A lot of kids are going to be stuck in the schools. And there are single dads, and there are gay dads. And there are, there are gay moms, and, there's two moms, and one of them's like, well, I'm not doing that. How do you decide which one does it? So it's not a feminine pursuit is my point. It's a family endeavor. Families decide to do it. Families carry it out. It's not all done between the hours of 9 and 5. It could be all done on Saturday and Sunday. There are so many ways to deal with this. The answer to the question that I was asked, the short answer is no. Moving on. You heard probably the rest of what I said. But anyway, but I do know that the most successful homeschoolers I know, dad does participate in some way, shape, or form. Now, what could they have shown? Here's what they should have shown more of. They showed a little, but they could have shown more. They could have shown more of dads showing kids what they do for work. They could have shown more about dad doing out, activities, sports, hobbies, things that dad likes to do, passing that on to the kids of both genders. All right. They could have shown more about dad teaching the kids, if he is the primary breadwinner, about budgeting, about finances, about all the things that he's taking care of. There are so many things dad can do that dad's the best one to do. They could have showed, the kids out, learning, who knows, but something that dad is good at or likes or knows about, that again, doesn't have to be taught between the hours of 9 and 5. Could be done on a weekend, could be done on a vacation, could be done any which time. There was a kid who was flying in a glider, but he had an instructor, so it wasn't his dad. So, they showed a lot of great extracurriculars, but the whole time I'm sitting there going, what does that cost? Like, what does it cost to go flying and have flying lessons? I don't know. Maybe it's not that expensive, but I was glad when they did the at-home baker, because I'm like, that people could pull off. Flying lessons, maybe not so much. Parkour, I don't know. So there were, it would have been cool to see more hobbies and extracurriculars that are accessible to more people, along with more masculine energy in this and more masculine imagery in this. And every time they got there, they got closer. Like, where they're out fishing and they're going to Yosemite and they're in the RV and but even the mom even bought the RV. The son helped, but then, they decorated the RV and they did the whole thing and so forth. And it was there. It's like whatever was great. There was a flip side of it where I was like, oh, wait, don't go, more of that. So there's that. And let's see, what else do I wish there was more of in the movie? Well, I mean, I really have covered it. I've covered the topic. I've already gone over a half an hour, but I've covered the, the good and the less than great. But this was good. Okay, this was good. Melissa says, I appreciated that the very bougie couple did show that they used a tutor. That's a great resource. It could have been expanded on. Agreed. So that's another one to add to, like, the good and the bad. Like, the good, they showed that they used outside resources. Thank you very much. That is, totally fine. Even if the outside resource is an entire online school. My kids attend an online homeschool academy. Now, they can a la carte it. They don't have to do like every single class. They don't have to get the transcript there. They can take a class. They can take as many as they want. I know other people, I think Lisa was in the chat before, her kids take like a class from, Royal Fireworks maybe, or a couple classes here, and maybe from Well Trained Mind, and you can cobble it together. But, parents not doing the teaching. And they're also not just out getting books and trying to figure out curriculum. They're like, you know what? There's experts out there and they know what they're doing and they're passionate about their subject matter and they can like tutor my kid or whatever. When you have a kid who's in middle school or high school, it's a little bit easier for the kid to self-serve, even if it's on a computer. And so I think that's fine. They could have expanded on that. I wonder if they were trying to downplay the use of technology and show books and books and books, which I don't mind. I like using real books. More than tech, especially for those little kids. But, and I absolutely recommend it for the little kids. Before they are proficient readers, they should just be all up in paper and pencils and books. But for the older kids, I think showing some opportunities for online classes that are high quality, that you can vet, for philosophy or worldview or whatever. I think they could have expanded on that, because that again would make it more accessible to those parents who say, I got to go to work. I'm a single mom. But what I can do is I can find, a retired lady who goes to my church, who's willing to hang out in my house until I get home for, like a meal or minimum pay or whatever, just to do it while my kid is on their online school. Like that, people can find solutions like that, but you got to make them aware that that exists. And this felt a little bit more hands-on, especially with the parents saying, well, the academics come second into experience. Well, that's lovely when you have the time to give your kids all kinds of experiences. We've got to make a hybrid model where it's still accessible for that parent. And I'm not talking virtual school like they did from school when they closed the school. That's not homeschooling. And they mentioned that in the movie, but again, not long enough. Like when you did that, that wasn't homeschooling. Moving on. It's like, hang out there for a second and explain why. It's not homeschooling because you didn't pick any of that. You didn't pick any of it. It's arbitrary. It has nothing to do with your individual kid. If they don't turn it in on time, they're in trouble. Like there's a million reasons why that has nothing to do with homeschooling. But you can make those choices and get to know those teachers with certain online homeschooling programs. And I would like to have seen more of that, or with tutors or retired teachers or people you bring in from the outside. I've talked about it on the channel. There are college kids out there who have studying to do. And if you feed them, if you're like, I'll tell you what, you can use my internet. You come to my house, you're responsible, you check out, you like kids, you're willing to help my kid with their math or whatever, but while they're busy working on their stuff, you can do your studying, and I feed you lunch. There are people who do that. They'll be like, I can use your internet for free. I get free lunch. And all I got to do is kind of babysit this kid. Work it out. Barter system. You might be able to find something, or a friend's kid or a college kid. So that's, that's one of the other missed opportunities, is showing the use of outside help. So I've basically, yes, this too. Academics are the foundation, experience builds on knowledge. I agree. Now, in this particular case that we're talking about a teenager, so we would hope or presume, although they should have told us, that we're dealing with a kid who's had a solid academic foundation. And now the mom is saying, if she's in a given day and she wants to work on her cakes and, gets the academic second, she lets her put the experience first, the academic second. That's the impression I got. Not like you can bail on academics and just bake cakes for the rest of your life and you don't know how to read. That I didn't get that impression. Okay. So I'm going to open it up now to Q&A. If you have a specific question for me about homeschooling, about any of the things that, I've done or would do, or what I recommend for your particular situation, or things that have just heard me say about the movie that you're like, yeah, what about that, or whatever, and you want my take on it, you can throw it into the comments. I'll bring up the question. I'll answer the question. If you want to come on here and talk to me, I'll give you the link for a super chat and we'll do it that way, whichever you prefer. But anybody got any questions? Anything at all, or comments, or things you want me to address? This is your golden opportunity. You've got my attention. I'm going to scroll back through while you're thinking. I hear, Rachel D says, my son is 3 and has already learned so much from his dad about fixing cars on the weekends. See, love that. That is so great. Take your kid to work day. Absolutely. These are the kinds of things that dad can do. Let's see. And here's what's this. There's an article called The Lost History of the House Husband by Roman Krusnarek. I'm probably saying it wrong. But I think these are great suggestions. Let's see. What is this one? Perfect ideal for, of course, not happening. Parenting is more important than the cleaning. Don't kill ourselves over it. Yeah, that is true. So that was the other thing that I noticed in the movie is their houses were spotless. They talk about, they talked about, like, oh, well, some days are days and it's chaos and this and that. And I'm looking around going, this doesn't match. Like the optics are not matching the words. So it's like whoever made this movie decided it was going to be an easier sell to sell homeschooling if you had almost perfect parents who just seemed perfect. I mean, it was intimidating how perfect a lot of them were. Okay. Their houses were clean. Their little planners, they showed one mom, looking at her little planner, we're going to do this at this time. And this is, and that's fine to show it, but they showed it like 3 times and they showed a different set of planning tools like bins and boxes and shelves. And that's great variety, but everything was so tidy. I didn't see any sinks full of dishes. I didn't see any chaos. I didn't see anything about the downside. And when they said, oh, there are bad days, give us some examples. What's a bad day? And I'll tell you why that was a missed opportunity, because it was a little jarring when they went from I don't want to call them the bougie couple. That's not nice. They were very attractive though. The blonde couple who had the designer in, when they started, they were like, it's so great and it's amazing and it's wonderful and everything. And then it's like they cut to like, so we're, reevaluating things and we hired a tutor. And it's like, so instead of being like, so we did a reassessment, everything's going great, but we've reassessed things because we had some problems, blah, blah, blah. And we decided to bring in a tutor. There was a little bit of like quake, and it was jarring because everything had seemed so perfect. So I think they could have, yes, show the ugly. It's relatable. People want to see that, and perfect people, right? You got to have people who struggle. We all have struggled. There's nobody out there who's homeschooled that hasn't had days where they were just like, maybe this is why people worry, are okay with worrying about rushing to the bus because it's easier than this or whatever. And they need that encouragement. So Rachel asks, what's the youngest age you'd recommend starting a focused academic instruction? I don't have an answer to that. And I'll tell you why. Because this is going to depend on your specific child and your specific family. So I have seen kids do focused academic instruction as young as 4. And they love it. They gobble it up because that's the kind of kid they are. I've seen other parents try to start at 6, and it's a dismal failure because the kid's not done with the phase of their development where they want to play and rough and tumble and touch things and take things apart. And they're just not a sit still and do focused academic instruction kind of kid. That's not to say you couldn't take that same rough and tumble 6-year-old and do some A, B, C, or what, whatever. But it's just saying you're not going to have seat work with somebody like that. And if you try, even if they're allegedly ready for kindergarten in the school world, that you're not going to be just beating your head against a brick wall. So I don't have a youngest age. If you have a profoundly gifted child and you don't start when they're indicating they're ready, they let you know. They might act out. Go judge by your kid. That's why I said first order business, figure out your family. If you decide you want to homeschool, spend almost all your time on your budget and your planning for your working and your childcare or your all that kind of stuff to make it possible to be home with your, not all day, but to make it possible to work your child's education around your life, not around a school system. Okay. So if your life is like, okay, well, my job is this hour to this hour, and his job is this hour to this hour, and my child is this age, and that means I'm literally physically not around, but I want to be the one that decides the curriculum, and I want to be the one teaching the values lessons or selecting the people to do that, and I want to be the person deciding what they eat. And even though I can't be the one there holding them and reading to them, whatever, like all day long, I want to be the person having the lion's share of the influence. Then you make that happen. You start there. And then you look at your child, because let's say you look at your child and they're a little kid, preschool age, let's say, and they are not at all ready for any kind of academic thing, but you want to make sure they love to learn. The person you look for, or the people you look for to surround them with for the childcare, it's going to matter tremendously. So, somebody who's willing to read to them, somebody who's willing to take them to the park and play with them and talk about, look at the leaves and look at somebody creative, somebody who's willing to do art projects with them, or maybe a focused group at your church. Or if I said church, okay, yes, religious, but sometimes you can go get a church basement, even if you're secular, and rent it out. If they're not using it and you got a group and you're not members of the church, but you'll make a donation, they might let you use it because they have space and they need money. There are community centers. If you live in a subdivision that has a little, clubhouse or whatever, chances are it doesn't get used every single day in the middle of the day. Maybe you can pool resources and have somebody go over there and hang out with the kids and play games and do whatever, especially on a rainy day, otherwise go outside. But, think about your child and your lifestyle first. And then you're going to start thinking, after you build all that stuff, then you start thinking about curriculum, because guess what? The community that you've built for yourself, the friends that you're dealing with who are homeschooling, or even if they're just acquaintances that you're homeschooling, are going to give you curriculum ideas. Or you might meet their child, and their child is 2-3 years ahead of yours, and they're loving what they're doing. And you notice that your child and that child get along well. Like, you've gone to park days, play dates, and they're like, you thick as thieves, they're hanging out, they're talking, and you get to talking to the mom or the dad, and they're like, yeah, so, this is what we're using for language arts, and now he loves it or she loves it, and they do. So take a look at that curriculum. Why not? Why not? That seems like a great idea. Okay. Ego Brain is coming up here. And Ego Brain, thank you so much for the super chat. I'm going to take this link, and I hadn't put it in the deal yet, but I'm going to give you the link to this, and I'm going to put it in the comments and pin it to the top so that people who want to do this, a pin message. So that is the link. If you want to come on in and have you with me, you can. If you don't want to, that's fine. You're good? That was just for me? Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Ego Brain is amazing. Ego Brain is my Koch brothers. We joke about that. That's my dark money right there. Anyway, so isn't the super chat glorious? So anyway, that is, but I do have the link. If you want to do a super chat and you want to jump in and talk or say anything to the rest of the audience, feel free. That is your opportunity. Let's see. What else did we have here? You don't know what kind of kid you have. Okay. All right. Well, let me back up and take out the word kind of, because that does make it seem like, there's like, the intersectional lines where you check a box. I would say, like, right in the chat, how old is your child? How old? Because that does make a difference. But you could, I think you said, didn't you say 3? If your child is 3, then you're in an observation stage. You're in an observation stage where what you're doing right now as a parent, every chance you get, is 3.5. Okay, good. So what you're going to be doing right now is reading to your child, see what kind of books they like, what kind of stories they like. Always read above their level. And because they'll just love the sound of your voice. It's not about them memorizing words. So read some books that are board books that they could memorize. That's fine. But also just read stories to them about things, that I think they like verse at that age too. So you can read poems. There's some books of poems. The kids like the kind of sing-songy verse. That's why they like Dr. Seuss, but they like the sound of your voice reading to them. And the cadence and the syntax of sentences they hear it, they hear you reading, they get like, I get the rhythm, I get how it goes, I get when things stop and where punctuation falls in and so forth. That forms neural pathways in their brain that when they go to start to read, that will help them. So reading aloud to them every single day, even if it's just right before they go to bed, so important. Finding opportunities to create things and make things, like what you're saying your husband's doing with the car and fixing cars. That's great, because the kid learns that, things work. Things are parts that get put together and then they make a bigger thing, and the bigger thing does things. And this is as far as their brains will go at that point, but it's an important connection that they make about how the world works. So at this point, you're just observing your child observing the world, and you're trying to see the world through their eyes a little bit without any preconceived ideas. So you're not going to look at them and be like, okay, so they need to learn math. No, you're just going to like watch and kind of take it in. Just let it soak in, like what gets them excited, what makes them smile. When they're like really giddy about doing something, what are they doing? When they're talking to you, and even a 3.5-year-old is babbling, what are they babbling about? What kinds of things attract their attention that they don't shut up about? Like that'll give you a lot of clues. So my 3.5-year-old, it was animals, animals, birds, animals, animals, birds, animals, animals, birds, animals, animals, like 24/7. If there were animals in a book, if there were animals outside, if there were animals on in a movie or a TV, it was animals, animals. You showed her anything other than animals? Animal, what? Squirrel, what? Okay. So my other daughter, it was, fantasy princesses, princes, the whole fantasy world, the whole world of magic, the whole world of, things unseen and all that kind of stuff. She was really into all of that. She liked animals, but she wasn't like super animated by them. And she liked making things with her hands. Like she didn't have very good fine motor, but she liked to make things, put things together. So that's what I noticed about her. And my last child was a very physical child. Is a very physical child. She's much more a doer. Like I need to physically go places, do things, run up and down the stairs. Likes to be physically active. Ironically, doesn't do sports, but she did do gymnastics and things like that. So you look at what their interests are, what gets them all excited. And then as they get older and they have more vocabulary, you can start asking them how and why questions. Like, why do you like this truck the best? What's your favorite? Why? Why is it your favorite? What do you like about it? And then look for opportunities to go find those things in the real world if you possibly can. Is there an auto museum somewhere, or a truck museum, a train museum, a thing online, a documentary or whatever, where they can see these things, a field trip you can go on? All that kind of stuff is really valuable. And you can use that to figure out what kind of kid you had. Now, I did say I was going to come back to that whole 8 kinds of smart, 7 learning styles, whatever. As I mentioned, the idea that there are learning styles, that a kid has a learning style and that is their learning style, and you need to present information to them in that way, or, they're going to struggle and have trouble with it. That is just not true. That is just not true. They're human beings and we all have our preferences. But there have been actual tests done. First of all, the guy that came up with that whole learning styles thing, auditory, kinesthetic and all that, the guy who came up with that was sort of debunked. It was his own like observation correlation that he just made into a, this is a fact. But then tests were done on it, and they were where they taught kids in their supposed learning style. Then they gave them tests in their supposed learning style, and they didn't do any better than tests that were for just across the board, not in their learning style. They didn't particularly do any better when they were allowed to study or learn in their own learning style, or even take the test that way. What it is, as I said, we are so allergic to using the word talent. You have talents, you have inclinations, you have preferences. We all have them. Given our druthers, there are certain subjects we like to learn a certain way, or we have certain, look at me, I like words. I love words. I love to read. I learn a lot by reading. I also learn a lot by listening because I like words. I'm a word girl. Always have been. But That doesn't mean I don't also love to paint and draw and do art and sew and do all kinds of other things. And I'm, pretty good at that stuff. Where I'm weaker is on math. And I struggle with my memory in certain areas. But believe it or not, there's more validity to the tests where they test things like working memory, the kind of things a psychiatrist can do with like puzzles and so forth. That has more scientific validity than this person likes music, learning with music. No, they're just probably talented at music. They probably have an inborn inclination to learn music because they're talented. They just pick it up easily because that's how their brain is wired, possibly for hereditary reasons. Like my verbal acuity is probably hereditary. My eldest daughter has it too. She had her IQ actually broken out, and it was like her verbal IQ was 140. It was insanely high. But then there were other areas of it that were on the lower end, they were more like average. Okay. When you combine that, you don't get of 140, you don't get, a Mensa member. So we don't teach people based on like their one thing they're really good at. First of all, real world isn't going to let you do that. You have to encounter the world as you encounter it and work with numbers and work with words and work with different things. But knowing a child's strength or a child's inclination or a child's talent just helps you look for opportunities for them to be especially successful and engaged and enjoy what they're doing. They're not going to enjoy every single thing they're going to do and learn. They should enjoy learning though. And one of the things I did like about the movie is they said, you are not, you're not raising like schoolers. You're not raising students. You're raising learners. I know that schools have tried to co-opt that word and say, these are our learners and these are our learners. And I hate when they do that, but this is in the literal sense. We're still learners. We're adults. We can't get through life if we're not constantly learning. That's what you want. You want your child to love learning and think of it as an adventure and something they can do. So when they're young and first doing it, obviously it helps if you look for those opportunities and you capitalize on their talents. But I call them talents. Your mileage may vary. Let's see, what else have we got here? We've got Rachel says, oh, that's why he enjoys the same books about vehicles over and over. Cool. That's tangible and basic. Yep, probably does. And not for nothing, your husband who works on cars, he sees that, must be like, Daddy, this is big, you guys. They want to be like, oh, here we go. I've got a troll. Dang it. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm trying to get rid of this. When you, that is awful. I get those every now and again. When we think about what's going wrong in the schools and people like me are telling you guys, they're predators and it's bad and it's evil. And what's happening is indoctrination and it's truly dangerous for our kids. All you need to know to realize the truth of it is to look at how little kids, elementary age kids, even all the way to 10 years old, have, they look up to adults in their life. Ideally, mom or dad. Ideally, they look up to something, that mom or dad does, or grandpa or grandma, or maybe some other, hero they see. They look up to adults. They believe what we say. They believe what we say. So when it's us saying, check out the car, isn't the car really cool, whatever, and I really enjoy working on cars, and they want to be like us, and they're like, oh yeah, and they probably really do, because that is hereditary also. My husband's a car guy. His dad was a car guy, and he still to this day works on our cars. He just changed my brakes and my daughter's brakes, and he does all our oil changes, and he even ran a Mopar business for a while on the side. So, I mean, his dad was all into that. That's very common. But when they go to school, especially very, very early, and those bonds are severed too soon, they're looking for someone else to look up to. They're looking for someone else to make them feel good about themselves, excited, and want to be like someone. Remember, they're brand new here. They don't know what they're supposed to be. They don't know how they're supposed to act. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They look to us to show them, to model for them. So the adults in their midst, when they're young, especially up to the age of 10, are so important, because those are the people they're going to copy. You can't predict which one they're going to want to emulate. But generally speaking, the ones who make them feel good and successful, and I don't mean good like, you're perfect, you're wonderful, just like, oh my God, praise, praise, praise. I don't mean that. The ones that set them up for success, the ones that take them as they are and, just set them up for success. And even when they fall down, like, you're fine, that's good, moving on. Like life is Life is not meant to be perfect all the time. Let's go. It's fine. Those are the people that make them feel like life in the world is a pretty exciting, great place. And I fit in and I, belong here and all this kind of stuff. That's why they talk about belonging. Yeah. They want the kids to feel like they belong in the little group they want to assign them to by color, gender, this or that. So you have the opportunity to give them a healthy sense of self and all that and validate their evolving personal individual identity, but you get to be that role model. And that's a perfect example. Dad likes cars and trucks. Kid likes cars and trucks. So there you go. So is this, I tested verbal IQ of 135 and a performance IQ of 98. This is common and people don't realize it, that IQ is not a number. It's not like, oh, you have this IQ and that means we know something definitive about how you're going to do everything. No, it doesn't work like that. It is certainly more scientific than SEL. It's more scientific than all the SEL questionnaires that ever were by a mile. But I would hate to think that anybody gets their test and says like, this is the kind of smart I am, or I like words, therefore I'm word smart. Therefore I need this, that, and the other all day long. And that's my concern. I haven't read the book. So in fairness to her, and I would love to talk to her because I really liked her, like everything she said in the movie. I was like, yeah, about homeschooling, everything spot on about families, all that. But when she got to the different kind of smarts, I was like, I'm going to need to look into this more to see how she articulates that because of the learning styles deal. And part of why I'm so skeptical about that, aside from the debunking of those learning styles, is guess who picked up the learning styles and ran with it? The public schools picked up learning styles and ran with it and started telling parents that, we address all the learning styles in this school. And then they would do, just like they do representative diversity, they would do representative learning style lessons. This is our auditory lesson, and this is our kinesiology lesson, or the kinesthetic learner station, and this is this auditory. And I would just feel like, really? And so what they do is they would excuse using audiobooks by saying, well, we have auditory learners. So we let them use audiobooks to, for our auditory learners. And like, and what about the learner? And when's the auditory learner learning to read with words like that they look at? When's that happening? So if you grab hold of that and run with it as that's all you need, or that's how you have to teach, like your child's not going to learn if I don't do it this way. This is how they learn. They're smart. And if I don't cater to it, that's just not true. It's just that we all have all of these, just in varying degrees. Like, there's some of us are very low on the physical, like we're clumsy. Okay. And then there's some of us who are like me. I'm musically inept with music. I am the only member of my family. Well, my dad does this too, but I'm the only member of this family that lives in this house who will sit in a silent house all day. If nobody's here, I'm perfectly content to sit in the house with no music on and read or do my work or, whatever. I might watch a movie or something, or I don't have to have music on. If my husband's alone in the house, the music's going the entire time, every single minute that there's nobody here to talk to, there's music going. Sometimes when there are people here to talk to, there's music going. Music is the background of his existence. He has music on while he's working. He has music in the car. He has music everywhere. Just loves music. I love music, but I don't need music. Okay. And I certainly don't need it to learn. Now, there may be kids who learn better when there's music on the background. Okay, so put music on the background. It doesn't mean they have to learn with music. Like meaning, okay, we're going to play rap songs for you to learn your multiplication tables. That's what they're doing in school with the learning styles. Oh, we have a very musical auditory learner, so we're going to do everything with song. What? And like I said, they don't individualize. They don't do that anymore. So they just have these stations, or they have this hour block or this 10-minute block or this, and they give all the kids that, figuring, well, the one or two who are in there who have this learning style, they'll be satisfied. And then the rest get, and I'm like, just stop. Because it was better for all the kids when they did what she said in the movie, which is just, let's do word learning and logic learning and throw in a little bit of picture learning and be done with it. Okay. But do that really, really, really well. And the kids were better off they learned more. They had more knowledge. They were smarter. They had bigger vocabularies. So as lousy an education as it was with only logic and word learning in the day, and not enough physicality at all, it still left the kid a lot brighter for the outside world than all this, a little of this, a little of that, a little of the other learning styles. So I'm not into it. Let's see. What else we got for questions? So Giorgio is saying, when I did unschooling in high school, I got to become a connoisseur of music and discovered what genres I liked. That's fantastic. And, I wonder sometimes if I had had more exposure to music at a younger age. Like I said, my dad will sit in a silent house too. He was my primary parent. I wonder if I would have been more musical. I did in college get more into classical music to the point where I had to have it in my ears. I had a little Sony Walkman, little yellow Walkman. When I was studying, I would have on like Mozart or something. And I think I've even read that can help your memory or whatever to listen to classical music. But I did, and I would take naps to like the Four Seasons by Vivaldi, and I would do things like that. But it was always classical. So I didn't have to have just any music on. It had to be that nice kind of soothing or classical music or whatever. I've tried to make like music more of a thing in my life. And here's the honest truth of it. I love it. I love music. I forget. I literally forget. That's my reason. Like I'll be in the house and my husband will come home and be like, it's so quiet. Or my daughter too. She has music on all the time. She'll say like, how can you stand it? Like, why don't you have any music on at least? What is going on? And I'm sitting there like, I totally forgot that was an option. Like I literally forget to put on music. Just don't do it. Just don't get around to it. So go figure. But I've always got something to read. Always. I would be uncomfortable without something to read, but not something to listen to. Isn't that interesting? So anyway, let's see what else we have here. Let's see. Oh, wait, this is funny. When I was maybe 12, before I homeschooled, I made a list of things. I made a list of bird species. I got to 2000, a list of victims of the Titanic disaster. These are great things. I mean, kids make lists. You talk about the Titanic disaster. I had a bizarre obsession with disasters in general when I was a kid. I did. It was like a family joke. Tornadoes, earthquakes, big fires, hurricanes, the Hindenburg. I was obsessed with the Hindenburg. I had the recording of the radio broadcast of the Hindenburg, and I knew it almost word for word. Oh, the humanity. Like I played it so many times. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but I watched documentaries. And one Christmas, I got a book. It was one of these big books that is on actual newsprint. The papers are newsprint. And it's called like America's Disaster. I think it was America's Disasters, but disasters. Just had disasters all over the title. And I read it cover to cover in like a week. There were newspaper. It was like the actual original newspaper articles about the disasters. Sometimes they'd have two if it was a very big disaster. And I was just obsessed. It was weird. I had this like strange obsession. Like, how many people did they say? So of course it only stands to reason. I didn't sleep for 3 days on 9/11. When 9/11 happened, did not sleep, did not close my eyes for 3 days. I was absolutely ridiculously obsessed with every single component, with the whole investigation, trying to figure out, like waiting for them to bring one more person out alive. I was like, I just could not deal. And then of course had terrible nightmares. And, so we don't necessarily want to give into every one of our kids' obsessions when they're little kids, because that, if it's something negative, that could be bad. My eldest daughter has a fascination with true crime and has always wanted to be in like forensics or do something like that. Part of why she's studying psychology is she's fascinated with abnormal psychology. She can't understand why people would do some of the horrible things they do. So she wants to study it. And I guess it's okay, because I asked her, like, does this give you nightmares? No, nope. Just doesn't give her nightmares at all. And I know, meanwhile, we'll sit and watch true crime together. And I'm the one like going like, but for her, it's just science. It's just science. She just absorbs it all. She absorbs all the little techniques and everything about how they did it. And she thinks maybe someday she might want to be like a jury consultant or something, because she's so interested in how people think and how they make decisions and why they do certain things, why they don't do certain things. And who knows? But I'm like, okay, that's great, honey. Here's some books about that. Oh, do you want to talk about this? No, not in detail. You know, she wants to go into all the little forensic details of a crime, or she wants to like show me pictures. Like, no, I'm fine, thanks. But she's 18, so I can say that. But when they're little, they want us to take an interest in their interests, and hopefully they're not interested in dismembered bodies when they're little. Anyway, so let's see. I'm still into disaster stuff. I recently watched a movie, fictional, called Airplane 77, about a plane crashing underwater and being floated to the surface. Oh, it was fictional. Do you think that could really happen? I wonder. Poseidon Adventure was a big one that I liked too. I've watched all the versions of that, although I'm terrified of water, like absolutely petrified of drowning. You guys are learning way more about me than I had planned for. And then there was another one. This is Wiki says, I knew someone who said that they were so engaged in music, it would distract them, so they couldn't use it as background. And that is me with lyrics, because I'm a word person. So I'm the person in the family that, you know, my family, especially my husband, he'll be listening to music because he likes the beats, or he likes, you know, the sound, the melody or whatever. And he's sitting there listening, and all I can hear is the lyrics. I can hear the music too, but I'm like, why do you like this song? And it's like, isn't it catchy? Don't you like it? I'm like, do you hear what they're saying? It's like, he's like, what? So then I tell him the lyrics. He's like, oh, yeah, I guess that is kind of bad. I'm like, So like, I'm so dialed into the words. That's why I could never listen to music that has lyrics, even if they're hard to decipher, because I'd be sitting there going, what are they saying? And then I'd be the one on my phone going, lyrics to such and such a song. And I have to know. I'm not this person who can just be like, okay, you know, it's I have to hear the words. I'm just obsessed with that. So, which is part of why I read these documents from these schools, and what to other people is like word salad, you know, and they're reading it's like, oh, you know, it's like centering diversity and equity and the beauty of the belonging of the learning of the things, whatever they're saying. And I'm the one sitting there going, what they really mean is this. Because in addition to the education background that I have, and having read all these research papers and garbage out of the ed stuff, I know what they really mean. I know what those words really mean. And parents don't. They're pulling the wool over your eyes. So what's this? Shannon says she may have the stomach and will do great things in this world to help sexual assault. You know, you're so right. And I've actually suggested these things to her as things to keep in the back of her mind, that there are fields that need people like her, that need people who are not put off by some of this stuff, because there aren't a lot of people who are like that. And she is. And let's see what else we got. Giorgio is asking, I'm interested how people can be well-rounded in their education, but also specialize in an area. Oh, that is a really good question. This is something actually that homeschooling does really well. So one of the girls in the movie was a good example of this. Now, granted, she has a fascination with space and, you know, astronomy and things like that, which was developed and cultivated early. Her mom traveled with her all over the world, and I don't think they specifically were looking at this, but she went to places all over the world and just had a very well-rounded education in the world by virtue of the freedom they had to travel. And it didn't look like they traveled large, single mom. They just went to some exotic places, probably where it was really inexpensive to stay. And the mom just didn't ever put any arbitrary limits on what she could read as far as the how difficult it was. And so this girl amassed so much knowledge. She was so good at math, and she knew so much about history, and she knew so much about all the subjects so quickly because her mom never stopped her. It was like, here you go, here's more, here's more, here's more, here's more. She was graduating from college at 12. Very worldly look. I thought, listening to this girl talk and seeing her, I thought she was at least 16 or 17. Graduating college, she's on track to get her master's degree by 16. And her plan is to be a NASA engineer. She already has an internship with NASA. So she will be specializing in engineering for, that sort of thing. But she has such a depth and breadth of knowledge. And this is, David is pointing this out here accurately as well, because she's been a voracious reader. And because they were traveling and on the move, reading was her source of entertainment more so than like devices, spotty internet. You're in, you're somewhere in Amman, Jordan, like just looking at ruins, or you're here either way. You're going to be looking at books. You're not necessarily having access to all this tech. Most of our kids sit for 8 hours a day in a building staring at a screen. Parents don't realize that the kids are spending almost no time reading paper books. Zero. They're on tech all day long. Then they are in the car on the way home or on the bus like this. So now you had like 7 to 8 hours of school. Now we have the transportation getting home. They're on tech. And then they get home and they do homework. Well, where's the homework? On a screen. They're on screens, I would say 90% of their waking hours. They're not reading books. And I differentiate books between what you can read on a screen, because we do not, even adults, we do not remember what we read on a screen as well as we remember what we read in a book. That's been proven. That's scientifically researched. We read faster on a screen. That's all. We don't remember it as well, which makes me wonder if part of the reason people seem to have the attention span and the memories of gnats on social media is they read everything they read on a screen. They even read what they read that you posted on a screen. It's already out of their brain. It's like, Bling! You're like, I just said that. What? Or that's not what I said. What? They just don't hold, it doesn't hold on. I don't know if it's the tactile, holding the book, if it's something to do with the way you have to process the words on a page and then turn the page. I don't know. But something about the scrolling, something about the skimming, something about it just doesn't stick. And if you're not a proficient reader and you're reading something for the first time that's challenging for you, so much the worse. So that is the thing that, more knowledge faster is a function of reading more. And homeschoolers have an edge. Now, I see that Rin is saying maybe the point is not to reach a larger audience, but to reach an audience that wants God-focused learning. And I said at the outset, I'm not sure if you were here in the beginning, that if that was the focus, that's absolutely totally fine. It's his movie. He can do what he wants. But I'm just saying the marketing wasn't that way. So when you bill a film as for everyone and you say it's called The Homeschool Awakening, understand, Christians don't own homeschooling as a concept or a brand. So if you're going to say The Homeschool Awakening without putting the word Christian in there, or faith-based or God-centered or something, you are by default going to reach a large audience of people right now, because there is a big push. And in fact, if you watch the movie, in the beginning of the movie, they talk about how many people are leaving schools, how many people, there's a huge surge in homeschooling. So many people are homeschooling. They didn't say so many Christians are homeschooling. They said so many people. So if you're acknowledging that there's a giant exodus of people leaving the schools, and then you make the rest of your movie God-focused, it's a disconnect. There's going to be a percentage of people in the audience who are there who feel like they don't belong. And as I said, it is not his job to make me feel like I belong. It's just a missed opportunity if his goal were to have more people homeschooling. If his goal were to have more God-focused learning, then the people he reached, I'm sure he was effective. But he may have actually inadvertently turned off a lot of people who want to be home learners or homeschool providers, teachers or coaches or whatever, who don't fit that mold. It doesn't take much in a world where people are doing the us-them false binary to have people who don't fit into a binary, to have people who are kind of like, I'm just me, right? It doesn't take much to have people feel sort of homeless or feel like I don't fit into any of these categories. It just starts to feel like another grouping, another group, another identity, another thing where if you're not one of us, you're not one of us. And there I was, a homeschooler, and I felt like even though I do a lot of the things that they're doing, I really felt like I probably wouldn't be welcome. Like my children and I probably would not be welcome in one of their co-ops. Or if we were, we'll be like, okay, I've actually had it said to me. I've tried to join co-ops and I've been told explicitly I was not welcome because I was not doing a God-focused curriculum. I wasn't doing an anti-God focused curriculum. I'm not a militant atheist. I'm not anti-Christian. I have most of my very dearest friends are Christian, but to tell me explicitly, like, oh, I'm sorry, your kids wouldn't belong here, wouldn't be good. And it wasn't even like you wouldn't be comfortable because we spend 80% of our time talking about God. It was like, we only want God people in here. So how is that any different from somebody saying we only want Black people or we only want white people or we only want, Hispanic people or we only want, I mean, how is it any different? Now I understand it's a belief system, it's a worldview, but if you're talking about going on a hike, if you're talking about going hiking or going canoeing or having a bake sale or doing something like that, like, okay, or even like learning Spanish, it just seems whatever. I mean, go ahead and do it. It's a free country. And if you guys have learned one thing about me, it's that I am all for parents' rights. You guys do what you want to do. I want you to be free to be as exclusive as you want to be. If that's what you want to do, is have a Christians only, Bible believers only in my kids' periphery, and that is all I want. I don't want to hang out with Deb's kids because she doesn't do the God thing. So I don't want my kids to know her kids. You should be free to do that. 100%. You should be free to do that. I would never hold that against you. I'm just commenting as a reviewer, as a reactor on the video, that the marketing seemed aimed at anyone and the product was not. That's it. Just an observation. So, let's see. We don't separate the world into this is for God and this is not for God. In his mind, we're all children of God. I know why people don't like that, but that's how we see the world. I understand that, Ren, and I appreciate that. And as I said, I don't think that Cameron, Kirk Cameron was trying to say, you guys are not welcome. I don't believe that. I think he seems like the nicest guy in the world. Okay. I just think that he so believes what he believes, and that's fine. And that's commendable, that he maybe forgot to include it in the marketing, or he didn't take into account, or, he was sort of looking at it and saying like, it'll be okay. The people who aren't religious, they'll go along with it anyway. And I think he may have misread the room. I do. And I do think that it solidifies the myth that homeschooling is exclusively a Christian endeavor, which it isn't. So I understand that Christians see this as one continuous thing and thought process and effort. I totally get that. But in the wider world, like if you're just standing back outside, for the people who aren't Christian, it isn't literally, if you get my meaning. Like it isn't, anyone can homeschool. That's just how Christians see it and Christians do it. So let's see, what else have we got? The biggest factor, Shannon says, the biggest factor in child's education success is books in the home, higher than any other factor. Our doctors should give books at appointments. Couldn't agree more. 100%. Do you guys, am I dating myself to remember something called Riff? Reading is fundamental, the Riff Wagon. Did you guys have that when you were kids? It was a 70s thing. I don't know. But there was this group called Riff, Reading is Fundamental, and it was like a van, and it would go around in urban neighborhoods. It never came to my neighborhood, but it would go around like in New York and places like that. And it was a little traveling bookstore, except all the books were free. And the people, kids could come in. Oh, for the love of God, here we go again. I really wish there was a way to stop this. Kids could go in there and pick a book or two. You couldn't pick 10 books, but you could go in and choose a book. And I know Dolly Parton has done a lot in this area as well, getting books in the hands of kids who can't afford them. What is concerning to me, however, is that if we don't get the message out through whether it's the pediatrician, the public library, the TV commercials, whatever, then they may not know. So what I'm saying is there are a lot of parents, and think about this, if you're an immigrant parent, refugee parent, you don't speak English as your first language, you're just looking at the school. You're like, okay, I'm sending my child to school, and the school's going to do what my kid needs, right? So if the school is going to be too, squeamish about saying to the parents, you really need some books in your home. You need some books in your home. And if the school isn't even sending books home, They used to at least, poor kids would come home with a stack of books from school. They'd have their reading books. They'd have their assignments. They'd have whatever they're doing. They'd have their McGuffey reader, whatever. They don't even have that. They have a Chromebook. That's not a book. And if they don't see books around the house, magazines, reading material, that's a shame. So there really ought to be more of that and more outreach into that. Thank you, Rin. I so appreciate your comments. Thank you for the super chat and for coming. If you wanted to jump in and say any more, I'd be happy. You can use the link, but I do appreciate the super chat and your comments. And then let's see the bookmobile. That's another one. Riff was another one. Wiki said that you remember that as well. Okay, great. And the moving library, right? So let's see. Matilda says, in our Catholic groups, we allow anyone, as long as they understand that we live openly, practice our devotions. We tried other Christian groups who required a statement of faith and couldn't join. Right. I know people who do classical conversations, which is Catholic based, and the different ones are different, but there are classical conversations groups that have your approach. You can do classical conversations. You just need to understand it's from this perspective, but you do not have to profess. You do not have to have a statement of faith. And you don't necessarily have to participate in the prayers and things, anything they do that's explicit. But a lot of it's done as humanities and history. And obviously the people who are believers incorporated as the truth, and those who aren't incorporated as humanities and history. So that depends on the approach. But there are plenty of classical schools rather that are in a Christian tradition, but it's not quite the same as like parochial. That makes sense. Let's see. Wishbone, yes. Okay, let's see. Reading Rainbow. I remember when LeVar Burton did Reading Rainbow. I loved Reading Rainbow, and I had plenty of books in my house. I still watched Reading Rainbow because I didn't always have the books that he did on Reading Rainbow. He managed to find books I'd never heard of. I was like, I don't have that book. And it was usually below my level because I was already reading above that level, but I still love to be read to. All kids love to be read to. And I loved the little pictures and how they showed the pictures. And I love that. Yeah, right. I love the Matilda's little profile picture, Ali Sheedy. She was one of my favorites in that. Okay, so let's see. Anything else that you guys are curious about or have questions about? I'm really, really wanting to do a panel discussion on this channel to bridge the gap between the faith-based homeschoolers or even just, it doesn't have to be between faith-based homeschoolers and religious homeschoolers per se. I just want to do some kind of a panel discussion to bridge the gap between Christian and non-Christian or Christian and non-religious anti-woke people. I say anti-woke for lack of a better term, but people fighting for, reality, team reality, like Western civilization is A-okay. We would like it back, please. Because increasingly, and this is what the woke have done. This is what the woke and our government have done. They've been so good at dividing us. They've been so good at propagandizing that everybody who isn't a believer is with them, right? And that everybody who doesn't agree with them is a right-wing Christian conservative, right? Which is such nonsense. There are so many people. There are people who would still, if it weren't for all this garbage, be voting Democrat. And I'm not saying I agree with them on the finer points of policy, but if they want to come to the table and fight against groomers, and they want to fight against gender ideology, and they want to fight against like this lunacy in education, oh, please, all hands on deck. I'm all for it. They want to homeschool their kids in a secular way and not, and then, they have their ideas about the economy. I mean, by all means, I want to help you homeschool because I think it's better. And maybe through reading of, economics and John Locke and Thomas Sowell, you'll change your mind. But anyway, but I think we've got to stop being sucked into these false binaries. There are so many people fighting against the woke who are not religious. And yet I've been in discussions on Twitter in particular where people say to me, they're like, you must be a progressive because you're not a Christian. I'm like, but I'm not. And I never have been a progressive. I was a Christian briefly, but I've never been a progressive ever in my life. I didn't stop going to church because I hated God. I didn't stop going to church because I was angry at God. I didn't stop going to church having really anything to do with God or church or Christians. It's because of me. I stopped going to church because I felt like a fraud. I felt like a liar. I felt like a hypocrite. I felt like it was wrong. and that you shouldn't lie. You shouldn't go and be pretending to believe in something or have a deep faith about something. If you don't, it just strikes me as wrong. And I didn't want to set a bad example for my children about about honesty. So if they were sitting there saying, "Mommy, do you believe this?" I wanted to be able to say, "Absolutely, I do." Okay. So I didn't, and I have told my children, if you do, I'll drive you over there. I mean, if you want to go to church, if you want to, if this is your heart, if this is what calls you to, I'm not stopping you. Absolutely not. It is not my job to get in the way. I want my children to have some kind of philosophy in their life. I want them to have something that grounds them. And that would be one of the ones I would put in the healthy category. Okay. It just didn't work for me, what I didn't believe. Okay. But there's plenty of good lessons. I don't brush that off. And, but I know so many people like me. I know so many people who are Jewish, who are anti-woke. I know so many people. I mean, I grew up Jewish. But why does it mean so all Jewish people are left-wing progressives? No, they're not. There are even Muslims who are not Muslim fundamentalists who are looking at the stuff and they're like, no, I don't want my son to be my daughter. I don't want, this in my life. And so they would like to homeschool. So there are so many people that would come alongside all of us who are fighting these bad ideas that are harming all of us, not just our kids. But if we dive into this false binary and alienate, whether intentionally or accidentally, I think we're going to make slower progress. And it's also where the woke kind of win. What is going on? This bot just won't go away. It's also where they sort of win. This isn't going away. This one will not go away. I'm trying to block this person. All right. This is where they kind of win because that is their argument. It's not our argument. And so what I'm seeing is I'm seeing people who are Christian, who are or who claim to be. Let's say that because I don't know everybody on Twitter, but who claim to be, and they come into my Twitter feed and they say, I'm anti-woke, but you can't be a moral person if you're not Christian. Or they'll say, where did you get your morality if you're not Christian? You must have gotten it from the Bible. And I'm like, no. Well, weren't you raised Jewish? I'm like, yeah, in a really hypocritical synagogue where there were a lot of people who had beliefs. I don't think you'd want me to, wouldn't say that their character was necessarily the best. That is not where I learned my morality. I learned it from my parents. And I learned it through, conversations about right and wrong and things that were, just reasonable and rational and didn't necessarily tie to the Bible. But I think I have the same good values and character that a lot of other people do. Their answer is the Bible and mine is not. Mine is philosophy. Mine is reality. There's still all of these terrible tweets or comments are showing up in that chat. I am so sorry, you guys. I don't know why they're still showing there. Anyway, but so I just want to find a way to bridge that gap so that people can talk about evil as evil. It doesn't have to be the mystical or religious version of evil. We can agree that things are evil. We can agree that things are bad. We can agree that things are good and virtuous without necessarily using religion in public discourse. I'm only talking about public discourse. Privately, again, none of my business. Straight up none of my business. Just like what I talk about around my house is none of anybody else's business. So I understand, for example, that Cameron does not want to validate a secularist worldview. But there was nothing in particular about that movie that required him to have a conversation about worldview. He was talking about homeschooling. And again, there was plenty of room for him to talk about faith-based homeschooling. There just wasn't any room given to talk about not faith-based homeschooling, how people do it who are not using devotionals in the Bible and a faith-based or faith-centered explanation of why we're here and why America is great and all that kind of stuff. So, and that's all I'm talking about is if you're going to make a movie about homeschooling in general, there will be people who feel the disconnect. So David says we all recognize the evil and the truth that is being pushed out of public schools and support one another. I agree. I mean, there are so many people I talk to who are absolute atheists. They've never believed in God. I mean, I have. They've never believed in God. They've never had a religion. And they're like, this is straight up evil. And they'll tell you that. And they'll explain why. Because I meet a lot of religious people like, how can you even believe in a concept of evil if you don't believe in religion? I'm like, well, if you have an hour and I'll explain it to you, but I'm not trying to persuade you any more than you should try to persuade me. All I'm asking you to do is accept that I do. And we both agree that it's evil. We agree that the same exact stuff is evil. That should be good enough. I shouldn't need to justify to you my version of like how I got there, why I think it's evil. We both do. Yay, we're in agreement. I would never go to a religious person and say, why do you believe? Why do you believe? Why do you believe? Explain to me why you think this is evil. I'm just glad you do. That's all I care about. I'm just glad we're both on the same page. That's what matters. Yes, religious woke people do have a religion of sorts. Everything about them is like faith-based. There's no facts to back up the garbage that they're spewing. Everything from their gender ideology to intersectionality to, this is a social construct, that is a social construct. You cannot prove any of that. There's more evidence. Hear me now. There's more evidence for God, like hard evidence, than there is that their junk works. Okay? That's just, even in terms of number of people who are eyewitnesses to things and so forth and have documented events, there's more of that than there is of this woke. It is purely in the ether. Doesn't exist. Now, I've heard this before. You're going to make a God out of something. I think that's stretching the definition of God a bit thin. You're going to make meaning out of something. You're going to make something the center of your philosophy, your guiding principles. For religious people, it's God. But in that sense, it's a deity. It's mystical. It's unseen. It's faith. Okay? So people who don't have that make meaning. They have something as a guiding light, a guiding principle, but it's not mystical. It's not faith-based. Now, it doesn't mean it's materialist either. That I get that, like, oh, you're a materialist. You believe in things. I'm like, ideas. There are even those, by the way, deists, for example, who believe that God is an idea. So, what you're making when you say you're going to make a God out of something, I always feel like that's a little bit of a dig, by the way. Yes, I'm going to make central meaning out of something. I'm going to look to something as my guiding set of principles or my guiding principle in life, and I'm going to follow that like my North Star. Okay? Yes, we all do that. I don't call it God because it's not mystical and I don't have to have faith in it. I can actually demonstrate that it exists. My thing. Okay? And it's not material. It's ideas. So anyway, let's see what else. We have totally different understandings of God. I'm sure we do because you believe in God. So you have your understanding as a believer. I have my understanding as a non-believer. They can't coincide. It's like Schrodinger's belief. They can't. You can't unbelieve it, and I can't magically go where you are. So we're going to have different perceptions. That's just how it's going to be. The goal of this channel and the goal of all the work that I do is to find common ground to be part of the solution for our kids. Our kids have to live with each other. And we live in a nation where we have freedom of speech. We have a First Amendment where we have religious freedom. That means you're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of different religions, and you're going to have millions of different concepts of God. And the nation was founded on that's okay. Thomas Jefferson made sure that that was going to be okay. And what you can't do is you can't make it the rule of the country that there's only one of those. That's what I believe the woke are trying to do. I believe they're trying to create a national religion. It just happens to be this weird mumbo jumbo woo-woo garbage that we call woke. And I want to fight that. I don't want a national religion of woke. I don't want my kids having a worldview that is anti-American, anti-Western, anti-man, anti-human, in other words, pro-machine, and also anti-male, or anti-female for that matter, but definitely anti-male. I don't want those things. I don't want it to be anti-self-determination. I don't want it to be any of that stuff. And so I think it would behoove me to work with any and all people, any and all Americans who want that also, who want freedom to not trespass on other people and not have other people trespass on us. Right? I don't want to have to ask for forgiveness for trespassing on someone else. I don't want to do it. And I don't want anyone to do it to me. And I guess in the case where they accidentally do it, I will forgive them. Yeah, if they accidentally do it. Well, people trying to vote my rights away is not accidentally trespassing. There's not a forgiveness I can give them because they're intentionally trying to take my rights away. So there's that. And I'm going to fight that. Whatever it might be, my freedom to speak, my freedom to defend myself, my freedom to educate my children as I see fit. And I want you guys to have the same right. So I want Rin to be able to educate his children. Is it a he? Oh gosh, I hope I didn't just say he and it's a she. Anyway, but I want Rin to be able to educate their children however they see fit. Absolutely reading the Bible every single day, whatever that, I mean, I want that. I would fight for that, even though I wouldn't do it the same way. And some people say, well, that's how we got here. This kind of tolerance of everybody's way is fine. I'm like, no, everybody's way is fine in their house. In their house, in the privacy of their own home, on their dime, doing their own thing on their own time and so forth. I just assumed your gender. I'm a horrible person. I'm so sorry. Well, it says Rin. I don't know. It's not exactly a gendered name. I hope you're joking because I'm joking. Anyway, so yeah, let's do marketing. Giorgio says, let's do marketing. I'm not sure for what, but we got to do a better marketing job for homeschooling. I would suggest we start by not calling it homeschooling. It's like not a great name because it says home. Doesn't always happen at home. The world is your school. Society is your school. The library, the farm, the factory, the this, that, any place you go is your school. You're learning every place. And you're not, I don't think you're bullying me. Guys, he's not bullying me. He, she, God, please tell me what you are. Rin is not bullying me. This is when pronouns come in handy, don't they? I never use them, but now I'm apparently needing them. I don't feel bullied. I just feel disagreed with, and that's fine. Disagreement is welcome. We have to have these conversations. It's important for me to know how Rin thinks because Rin is very common, guys. There are lots of Rins out there. There are lots of believers who went to this movie and were clapping and cheering and loved it and thought it was great. I was clapping at parts, but I'm observing it with the eye towards telling other people to watch it. Like, I already knew everything it was saying. I didn't need to go, right? But I needed to know what it was saying because then I wanted to say to people, yeah, I highly recommend this. And I highly recommend, by the way, afterwards, they were trying to sell us on a bunch of websites and stuff. I highly recommend their websites. So I'm there as a little bit of a reporter coming back to you guys. And I have to be honest and say, if you're Christian, you're going to love it. And you should, by all means, go and, see the movie if you can, somehow online. If you can go to the websites that they have accessible off of their website, the homeschoolawakening.com, read the books they recommend. You're going to be happier than you're going to be happy. You're going to love it. It's going to be the very thing that you want. The homeschool conventions that they broadcast, you're going to want to be there. I guarantee it. You are going to want to be part of those. That is your world. What I'm simply saying is I can't say the same thing to the rest of my audience. And my audience is my audience, not Cameron's, but remember, Cameron advertised it like it was okay for me to go. And my audience includes many, many, many people who don't fit into that mold. My audience includes, for example, a woman out in Portland, Oregon area who is spending a ton of money to send her kids to private school. Great mom, really great mom. Not a religious person, but a really fantastic, attentive mother, put her kids in private school, hoping that would be better, and is just super frustrated with all the woke nonsense and the lack of academic challenge for her kids, et cetera. And she wants them out. She wants to figure out some kind of way, but would not feel comfortable in a Christian co-op or Christian homeschool setting with only other Christian homeschoolers. because we don't want to get into this God debate every day. And we don't want our kids to get into it. And I'm sure the Christian families don't want to get into it with us either. That's like a lot of stress. It's not to say we couldn't be friends. It's just that when you're busy educating your children, you may just want them to be casual friends or whatever. And you don't necessarily want them to be spending their academic day or their whatever having these kinds of debates. It's a bit heavy. You've got your worldview and you're comfortable with it. That's fine. That's totally fine. But I'm just talking about my audience. Yes, parent-directed education. I've thought of that one. Parent-directed, it could be good. Another one is, I did misgender David. I still don't know what Rin is. Rin? Okay. I've thought of just educational freedom, but that's a little too wishy-washy. It's too broad. Might be parent-directed. Another one could be like home-based learning. Home-based could be good. Home-based education. The reason I don't like homeschooling is school has the word school in it, and schooling is something that's done to you. You school people. You get schooled. That's an action that is done to you. You take an education. An education isn't really something someone can hand you. It's something that you get. You go out and you take, you participate in. So I don't love the term school either because it conjures up buildings or a very prescribed process that people recognize and they think I've got to recreate it. I've got to do school at home. And that is a myth. So that's not going to work. And they did talk about that in the movie. They said it's not school at home. Let's see. Rin's going to keep me guessing. Okay. Autodactism, like Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah, that's kind of cool, but it's a big word. I don't know if we can get a lot of people to buy into that. But I do real world learning. Now there's an idea, real world learning. Yeah, I like that. Another one I've heard people say is like just like world class education or, something, but I like real world learning. That's kind of cool. I'm going to put that down. Open source education. That's another good one. You guys have great ideas. You guys have really good ideas. So what is family learning? Which would I not agree with? So Rin says, I don't think Deb would agree with you, Rachel. I didn't say bullying is a bad faith. Oh, okay. I see what Rachel's saying. Rachel, I appreciate the concern. I can't tell from writing if it's bad faith. I'm giving Rin the benefit of the doubt that it's good faith. Because I don't know. I will agree with this. Absolutely. I have all her books and I use the language arts program. Love it. Absolutely. Love Susan Weisbauer. And she does educate from a Christian perspective. But what I do love about what she's done is all of her books, all of her work, those references. You don't need to explicitly use all the pieces. Even the Story of Us, which is a history curriculum by Susan Weisbauer, I do like, and I have used it. Even that can be used in a secular setting. And she has even said as much. My kids are going to be doing Well-Trained Mind for Spanish next year. So they are going to be using her online program for Spanish. Some of these ideas are great. Open source ed, parent-directed learning, etc. To me, bad faith is like, when somebody's just trying to like bait you and they just want to put one over on you or prove they're right. They're not interested in hearing what you have to say. Agreeing to disagree is totally fine. Like saying, okay, I heard you and you heard me and I feel like you heard me and reasonably well understood me, but we just aren't going to agree. And that's totally fine. What I'm hoping we can do is that, like I said, that we can agree on what we need to protect, what we want to save, what we cherish and want to preserve forever for our kids. Or at least long enough till our kids are grown up and then they can preserve it for their kids. But I will feel like I have failed as a parent if I don't try to, if I don't try to protect freedom. Ronald Reagan said, we're only, we're always one generation away. And I feel like it's my responsibility to do what I can. We can only do what we can do. This is what I can do. This is my thing. So let's see. You were saying I like open source education better than parent-directed because the best education is self-directed. Yeah, I see your point, because if we say parent-directed, it feels like the parent's going, do this, do this, do that. And, a child does need direction at the beginning. A child needs guidance. See, I like the word guidance a little better than direction, because guidance and role modeling is essential. They're new here. They don't know anything. Okay. And as my guest yesterday, Alex, said, and I hope you guys do have time to watch or listen to that broadcast, because it's just so important. I'm going to try to go get some timestamps and put in a written article about it with timestamps for the key points and quotes, but making clips just won't be possible, because taking some of the things he said so out of context with it, I don't think it's going to work, but I'll take a look. But basically, role modeling is parenting. I mean, if you are not role modeling what you want your kid to be and do, they're not going to learn it. That's the central thing. And that's why I'm not a fan of plopping them in preschool at 3 or daycare at 3 and just like, bye. And then at school and they're there all day. It's like, what? They're getting role modeling. They're just not getting it from you. And you are now, it's not even just co-parenting. They are parenting your child. You're the co-parent. So when the teachers tell you, butt out and we got this, whatever. Well, it's they're wrong, but they're not wrong in the literal sense of, I got your kid all day. What are you doing? Right? And they're getting snarky about it. The best teachers used to try to improve the bonds and increase the opportunity for parents to work with their kids and see what their kids were doing and read with their kids and be involved in their kids' education. All that, those days are long gone. Those days disappeared probably, in the Eisenhower era. That's just, forget about it. But yeah, I think, using words directed, even self-directed, while better, is a little too loose because the child is so brand new. I think that's totally fine for high school, even maybe like 8th grade. But, oh my God, ego brain. Thank you. Look at this. This has been an awesome stream. It cements why I think this channel is the best. Rational, reasonable. You can disagree without being combative. And of course, always informational. You model the ideas you share. Thank you. That is such a wonderful comment. And thank you so much for the super chat. So where was I? So yeah. So I think guidance, role modeling, that's one of the reasons I think I like the real world is really good, because yeah, that's kind of a little more general, but role modeling is so important. I wouldn't want to leave that out. Let's see. So Jeanette is asking, what safe coding program would you recommend? My daughter's 12 years old. Jeanette, can you elaborate on what you mean by safe? Are you meaning like not woke? Are you meaning like where the people teaching are not going to be creeps? I'm just trying to see if I understand. So if you could add a little bit more to your question, then I can answer it, because they're different answers depending on what you're asking me. I'm so glad you like the show, Shannon, and I'm so appreciative for all the sharing that you've done. Then Giorgio says, I find it weird people have a problem with self-help, as if people can't communicate advice through written words unless they mean faulty concepts. As if people can't communicate advice through written words unless they... Oh, I see. Okay. I think when people have a problem with the term self-help, they're referring specifically to the fad trendy stuff of where you go out to the bookstore and you pick up books that tell you like, this is how to fix your life. Like, read this book and you fix your life. And they get all into, there's an easy answer and I just read a book, or I just do these 10 exercises and I have helped myself, when it's never that easy. That may help a little. And like you said, if it's faulty concepts, it's definitely not going to help you. But it could have some good material, but it's never going to be quite that easy. There's work you have to do on yourself. There are things you have to do, and it takes practice. It takes effort. Like anything else, it took us a long time to develop bad habits. It takes a long time to develop good ones if you already have bad ones. And when we're teaching our kids, an important thing to model for them is that process can be as important as product, that, putting your effort into something will get a better result. And if you don't succeed the first time, that's normal. That's expected. Fail early, fail often, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that addressed your question, but okay. So now Jeanette has clarified, not woke, not creeps. Okay. Well, let's see. There are a few different things. I would recommend looking online for, maybe start with things like Well-Trained Mind, or I don't know if Royal Fireworks Press has anything with coding. I think they might be more humanities literature based, but you can check. And then the program that my kids go to, which is a middle school and above, it's a middle and high school program called, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of the school, Williamsburg Academy. Okay. But it's an online only middle school. They have a self-paced class in, which one is it? Let me think, which one is it? It's one of the coding languages. They have a self-paced class that you can take. That's one. My daughter took the self-paced class in coding, and I'm so ignorant, I don't remember what it was. But you have an advisor, and they're all great people. So I, would have no fears about creeps or anything like that. But you have an advisor, but you do the work at your own pace. They give you a pacing guide to say, like, ideally be through this many lessons at this amount of time. And if you need help from your advisor, you can go and email the advisor, but it's not working with another person. So if you want an actual instructor-led coding class, I've heard there are some actual physical centers you can go to that teach coding, but then I'd be really skeptical of those people because I don't know. I don't know anything about them. But online, I know that Williamsburg has a self-paced class, and there probably are some other things. What I can do is if you let me know how to communicate with you, if you go to my website, debfilman.com, and send me a little contact form, I can look into it and get you the names of some and email you back. So that's what I can do. We're off the top of my head. I know that there are some, Well-Trained Mind might be a place to look. Royal Fireworks Press and Williamsburg Academy are just off the top of my head. Okay, what else have we got? Oh, there's John. Hi, John. How's it going? Let's see. Yep, trendy branding. That's the self-help thing. Yes, it was Python. Thank you, Wiki. Thank you. I told you my working memory sometimes. I think my daughter got it from me. Yeah, it was Python. So she took Python, and that sealed the deal for her that she didn't want to code, but she didn't really think she wanted to code in the first place. I just kind of pushed her into it. I said she needed an elective in that category to graduate. And so I said, why don't you try it? It's a good skill. It's, you never know, you might need it, whatever. She took it, she finished it, she got a decent grade, but she's like, nope, I'm good. I don't want to code. Yeah, you're welcome. You'll send me an email and I'll try to help you out with that. So anybody else? Let's see. This is true, Rachel. Rachel's right. A lot of people flinch at terms self-led and the wrong picture comes to their mind. They picture a kid all alone on their own, just having a, radical type of like unschooling. I don't want to diss on unschooling, because I know there are a lot of people, and there are a lot of people in my audience who love it, who are like, I unschool and it's great. I unschool my kids. I know there's unschooling.com follows me. So for some families, it is absolutely perfect. It's the perfect solution. But if you're pulling your child out of school completely, like they've been in school a long time and now you're pulling them out, or you have a child who likes structure, those children exist. Okay. I have at least 1 out of 3 who's absolutely like that. Like if I tried to unschool her, she would look at me like a complete failure. She wants the structure. So that's where it comes down to knowing your family and knowing your kids, and the sooner you start, if you have a mind to unschool and you've got like babies, it's probably going to be a better thing to think about doing, because you're starting, kind of blank. You can set the stage and adapt as you go and figure it out all together. But I think for those who are pulling their kids out and, late elementary, middle, and high school, actually, ironically, you could say like, all right, pick your classes and go, if they have the executive function skills to do it. Very often they don't. If you're pulling them out for unpleasant reasons, they're going to need a lot of hand-holding and a lot of guidance to just get through and graduate if a high school diploma is what you want for them. Now you're giving them the diploma, so that's, you have a lot of leeway, but I think unschooling at that late stage might not really work for what you need to do. That is one thing. Going back to the reaction to the movie, remember I said, I think they missed an opportunity to give more examples of different routes to college or different ways of educating the older kids. I really wish they had talked more about, dual enrollment with community college and taking some classes there. I wish they'd talked about the, producing a transcript and the pros and cons of doing it yourself versus maybe hiring somebody to do it, or outsourcing to some, online instructors and cobbling together a transcript that way. there are lots of different ways. And one of the things that scares away new homeschoolers is transcript. What? I don't know how to do that. What? It can be very scary. And yet it's not scary at all. It's actually a really fun process. You have a lot more flexibility to do it for your kids. And you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how long it takes for your kids to graduate or how short. So I wish they had talked about that too. All right. Well, we have been chatting for more than 2 hours. Yeah, this is a very important. Emphasize topics schools don't like to teach. And I hope I've addressed most of your questions. If you have others, you know where to find me. I still am on Locals at thereasonwelearn.locals.com. I'm busy building another platform to replace it. So, but anybody who would become a member there, I will just transfer it over. So you're not losing anything. But if you want to become a supporting member, you'll have access to my 2 live streams on Locals for supporters only, Mondays and Fridays. I do Monday, it's about homeschooling. Friday, it's about education in general and culture. And I have usually a Wednesday night Zoom call, although I'm not doing it today because I'm taking the day off to do some family stuff. But as I said, please subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, I see a lot of you are, but if you aren't, big things are coming. I think they're big. Some really awesome stuff last week of June. Big, exciting guest. You're going to want to be here. Some of you might be annoyed with me and be like, what? But I think you're still going to want to be here for that. It's going to be live. I'm not telling you anything else. Just suffice to say, some really fun stuff is going to happen. And I think the format's going to be improved too. So I'm excited, really excited. Thank you guys for joining today. I hope you got something out of this. It was a good movie, not, dissing it entirely. I just think it was a missed opportunity to embrace a huge, huge segment of the new homeschooling and potential homeschooling audience and get people really fired up and engaged. But maybe that wasn't his thing. So we need to make our own movie, I guess. Thanks a lot, you guys. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you soon.